me. I'm a legal associate at Arinito and Company Advocates, and also a co-founder of Encent. Encent is an advisory firm that offers legal tech services to startups and advisory services to startups on a number of things, including privacy itself. One, I'm a human rights legal practitioner at the same time, so very passionate about digital rights. So this topic really is at my heart. That's how it is said. So let's go direct into the presentation. One thing that we must emphasize is the aspect of the importance of privacy itself. And that takes me to the definition of what privacy is, and also some sort of trying to explain the concept behind privacy as a right. So privacy has obviously very many definitions from very many scholars, but the most precise one that I always associate with is the definition that privacy means the right to be left alone. I know that the critics of this, it is not impossible in this world to be left alone. So even when you're enjoying your right, the right to privacy, there are other competing interests, obviously from business people, from the state, and from other organizations. So at the end of the day, it may not be very possible to be left alone. But again, what is more important is that even when you cannot be left alone, you should have a say, that autonomy of deciding who has information about you, who has access to your body, because now the concept of privacy is bigger than just information privacy. I will discuss some of those things. So from that background, you realize that the reason why you have data protection and privacy laws is it strikes that balance of the competing interests, especially when it comes to data and information generally. So privacy falls under civil and political rights, and usually commonly referred to as the first generation of human rights, among other three of the three. One of the most important generation, because strikes a balance of the relationship between the state and the citizens or individuals. Now, in this modern age, we have to add multinational companies that have assumed much role and also status of even states that are more powerful than states. You can look at Facebooks, you can look at the Amazons, you can look at Twitter and other spaces. You find that they in terms of revenue, they're even more richer than some countries. Also, in terms of power, they wield a lot of power, especially in shaping democracies today. So now these rights themselves, that the intention of this class of right or generation of right is to protect that the individual freedoms from infringement by governments and social organizations and natural and other juridical individuals. Those may be corporate entities that we can term. So it strikes a balance between between the enjoyment and also the other interests of those parties that you see I've listed there. So when you look at the concept of privacy, in the information age, is too much on information. Today, you cannot talk about artificial intelligence without data itself. It's the fuel that runs those platforms. So you can imagine if at all you emphasized that privacy is the right to be left alone. So at the end of the day, you take away the other competing, you don't serve other competing interests that are also important, especially in advancing innovation and so protection of other rights, and also even protection of the public good. So, for example, national security and public order and others. You realize that right now most of the states are using these technologies to collect information for planning, to collect information for security and surveillance and others. So, but however, one thing that we must note is that the reason why we have these laws is to make sure that there is that balance of rights and obligations of the states. So, privacy, you realize that the understanding or the contextual understanding of privacy itself keeps on evolving with the growing of technology itself. At the moment, by the time these concepts were being designed, there was no internet, there were no computers. The first paper that I always refer to, or that you can always refer to, is that one of Samuel Warren and Louis Brands, that was published in 1890 by the Harvard Law Review. And the technology in discussion there was the invention of cameras that were fueling yellow journalism, commonly referred to as sensationalism journalism, paparazzi, or whatever word that you may choose to use. But at the end of the day, when you read that paper, you realize the authors themselves were critical of how the private space was being invaded by the media itself without legitimate interest, because not every part of someone's life, even when they're public officials, is open for intrusive publication or publicizing. So that when you read that paper, that's why you realize that they're being critical of that kind of technology of the time. But today, as we speak, obviously there are several other technologies that have come on board, like artificial intelligence, like I said. So, sorry, I think I missed this. So you realize that as society advanced, obviously there was need of regulating these laws. You look at that paper that I've just cited, there were no any laws, for example, in the United States regulating privacy by then. And it was a new concept that was being designed by the two authors that I mentioned. And it's after that activism, and one of them ends up at the bench as a judge. And I think I forget the case, but he writes a very good dissenting judgment emphasizing the right to privacy. And as we know it of today, it's because of that kind of activism that we have even this right codified in several international instruments and also the domestic instruments that we have today. So I know you have had several discussions and you have been told about the legal framework of privacy itself, but all I want to emphasize is that privacy by design itself is already codified in some of the laws, and I'm going to be highlighting some of those aspects, especially the domestic law. But privacy as a right itself is provided for under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. When you look at Article 12, then also the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, Article 17 of it. So the Banjul Charter, usually human and people's rights. Then, however much there's no specific provision under that law that provides for privacy outrightly, commentators have argued that Article, I think it's Article 4 of that charter, can be read into to highlight the aspect of privacy by rather of privacy as a right itself. So Also, we have one of the most specific, okay, you can also refer to the UN Convention on Rights of Children. Article 16 provides for the rights of children, privacy of the children themselves. Then also you look at the African Union Convention on Cyber Security and Personal Data. It is one of those most instrumental laws, at least you can refer to on the African continent, because it is very specific, provides for most of the principles that we're going to be discussing hereafter. So here, coming home, we will have the Constitution itself that under Article 27 that provides for the right to privacy. Then also you look at the Data Protection and Privacy Act, Cap 97 of the laws of Uganda, the whole law. In fact, for it even domesticates most of the international principles on privacy. And also it has aspects of privacy by design, and I'm going to be discussing some of those aspects. So, okay. So the other issue, I think I've already discussed the importance of data protection and privacy. One of it is that, again, to allow the data subjects to have control of who knows what about them, and the knowledge of others about, you realize that the knowledge of others about us usually regulate how we act when we are with those people. You can imagine when you, for example, you meet your a money lender or someone who usually lends money to you. You will always, there is the way you're going to act before them, because they know your financial standing, they have financial information about you. But when you meet a Morgan that has nothing, no information about your financial standing, you may react differently. So in most cases, you realize that the importance of that, the right is that you have control of who knows what about you, and also that can help you to control how people perceive you. So that's how important the right is. And also you realize that privacy, data protection falls under the information privacy, which is also essentially linked to individual freedom and autonomy, since it enables different forms of self-representation, as well as enabling different forms of social relationship. So the other aspects that also look at is, why is data protection important? Again, we say that it regulates the competing interests. I think I've already talked about that. It also gives the power to data subjects over their personal information. So just like I said, that the existing laws equally embed these concepts like privacy by design, and to consolidate the efforts of this very important right in this information age. So what is this concept called privacy by design? Privacy by design itself means and management of a given system, to be having IT personnel at the moment. So when you're designing your system, you start questioning what are the privacy risks involved, and how do you mitigate them? So in that, you're already having this privacy at the back of your mind. The concepts of privacy, for example, if it is you're designing a system on onboarding clients, how do you look at minimizing the amount of data you're collecting using your onboarding system? Then also the security of those, taking into consideration the security of those the data subjects, or the people that are giving you their information. Then if your system is about data transfer, how do you put systems in place that facilitate facilitate security of data that is in transit itself? How do you put systems in place that make sure that that even when you have a data breach, it doesn't impact, doesn't have that that too much impact, especially on the data subjects. So those principles themselves, having them at the back of your design, by that alone, you're already incorporating privacy by design. So the other aspect, when you look at the other angle, is also in your business processes. For example, again, when I talk about onboarding clients, how do you onboard clients in your business processes, and how does that onboarding protect the process of onboarding, preserve and protect the rights and the data of the people that you're onboarding? So from that, you realize that itself, you're incorporating data, rather privacy by design, through the life cycle of your process, of your business. So is that you're not just looking at guidelines and standards and practices within the designing of your products, the designing of your ICT systems, if you're designing systems, even though they're just businesses that are not tech related, but again, you're incorporating that in your business processes. For example, if you have a hotel and when people are checking in, must give you this data, then within that process, you must understand who's collecting this data, who has access to it, how do you store it, then also all the safeguards. So you realize that now you're incorporating privacy by design, even in your business processes. So privacy by design obviously is not a concept that just fell from Mars to Earth. No, there are people like Anne who coined it, and Anne was an information and privacy commissioner in Canada, and she coined this argument, and it has been accepted, or it keeps to be accepted in very many jurisdictions at the moment. And you'll see that most of the concepts that she talks about have been embedded in some of the laws, including here in Uganda. So privacy by design advances the view that the future of privacy cannot just be assured solely by compliance. That's what I was talking about, that it's not even just compliance with the regulatory framework. I know PDPO has done a great work in enforcing the Data Protection and Privacy Act. So you as actors, it's not even just about complying with what they tell you or what the law says, but at the stand of incorporating privacy, that really it doesn't take care of other processes before products, for example, are on the market. It doesn't also regulate the designing processes, for example, of ICT products. So that's a lacuna that we have. So that can only be occupied by designers, innovators who are incorporating privacy by design within their products. So obviously, in this concept, she broke it down in 7 fundamental principles, and these principles obviously have been adopted by very many scholars. Have been adopted by other regulators worldwide. So obviously, I'm not also going to reinvent the wheel. I'm just going to discuss them the way she discusses them.
Morgan, I think we
there. So we must act. Are you hearing me?
I can now hear you, yes.
Oh, yes, I think I'm having a problem with my network. So, okay, so I was talking about the aspect of being proactive, not reactive. It feeds into the aspect of how do you minimize the risks? For example, how do you prevent the risks rather than looking at the remedials of the anticipated or identified risks? So, for example, if you're designing a system, you should be able to look at the loopholes and then cover the security loopholes and then cover those loopholes. If you're designing a business process and you realize that you're going to be collecting a lot of information that is even necessary, then you should have information that is not necessary. Privacy as a default setting. They say that the argument is that privacy by design seeks to deliver the maximum degree of privacy by ensuring that personal data are automatically protected in any given IT system. That even when you as a person or as an individual does nothing about protecting your data, the system itself by default protects your information. For example, I'm going to use the example of your phones. You realize that unless you turn on your location, your phones will not automatically turn on your location. So no one will have access to your information. Then again, unless your information, those apps cannot have access to your information. So that's a clear example of what privacy as a default setting is within the system. But that's just an example, but I know that there are very many other ways where you can have privacy as the default setting that I may not obviously talk about, but as an organization, as a business, as an innovator, those are the aspects that you should be thinking about because they're very important, especially in protecting the consumer and also building that trust. I'm going to be talking about those aspects later on of why you should be why you should take privacy by design are very important. So also the other concept is, or the other principle is the requirement to embed privacy into the design. I think we have talked about this, this requires that privacy measures should not just be add-ons, but should be they should be fully integrated as components of your system. So it shouldn't just be a by the way, but it should be a practice. It should be something that you take very, very serious and as essential components of the core fundamentality or fundamentals of your systems that you're building. So that's what they call embedding privacy into the design of your systems, of your businesses themselves. So the other concept is also the full functionality concept. So this one seeks to accommodate all legitimate interests and objectives. I think I was talking about this concept in line with other interests, for example, interests of the state, also interests of businesses, other businesses. You realize that today, in terms of technology, you're relying on outsourcing, on outsourced technologies or services that may require you to share some information or data with other actors. So at the end of the day, what you're looking at having a win-win situation between the parties and all parties that have competing interests. Yeah. I know I'm going to share this slide so you can read some of these things. Later on. Now, I can't see the page. My computer I can't see the page very well that I am on.
We are seeing a slide starting with ensure end-to-end security.
Yes, yes, ensure end-to-end security. Yes.
Yeah.
But one of it is that one cuts across the whole data cycle. That from the collection of this data, you're ensuring security of the information that you're collecting. That even when you've collected and stored it, there is that so secure. Then also when you're even disposing of this data, for example, deletion, you don't dispose of items of security. So it's from the beginning up to the end. It's an obligation that you have. And when you look at, for example, section 18 and 20 of our Data Protection Act, it covers some of these concepts on security. If I can just paraphrase for you, the section 18. Of records, and you see it regulates the number, for example, the aspect of how long that data can be kept, that data shouldn't be kept for a time that is reasonable, in line with obviously the purpose to why you collected that data. Then also, it also brings up the aspect of that provide that data can be kept for a specific period of time. Now, when you look at the Payment Systems Act, it requires all than for that financial information of users for not less than 10 years. But again, you realize that as a controller or as a data collector, you have that obligation to keep the information throughout the life cycle of that data intact, or you protect the security of that data itself. Then when you read section 20, obviously it is about the security measures that must be taken. So some of the information is that you should be able to identify on the data under your position as a business or as an innovator. Also, you must be able to establish and maintain appropriate safeguards against identified risks. At least for the startups that have dealt with, one of the things that I have emphasized is having risk management policies, issues to do with business continuity policies, especially having clauses around around how do you recover from a data breach. Data breaches are also important to regulate, for example, who has access to your systems. Then again, how do they access them? All of those aspects. For example, if you're having a business and then you have to rely on external disks, how are those external disks kept? If they have information related to individuals. If you're outsourcing cloud computing services, do you have an outsourcing policy? Does your policy in the first place require something to do with due diligence of the service providers if they have ever faced data breaches, and also how secure that information is, because now the service provider
Morgan, you are breaking.
that taking that kind of proactive approach.
Apologies, I think we just lost Morgan due to technical challenges. His internet has been a little bad. Let's give him a few minutes and he will join back. Okay, Morgan, can you hear me?
Sorry about that.
Okay, we can hear you. We had lost you earlier.
Anita, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Are you able to hear me? Morgan, are you able to hear me?
Oh, so sorry. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you well, perfectly well. Okay, so I think by the time you lost me, let me check the slide I was on. You can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Are you okay? Okay. Yeah, so you that we have those
Morgan, you are actually breaking and we are not able to hear you.
Our laws themselves. But again, I ask to disturbing. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you. But earlier you were breaking, so you could just begin from where you had begun from.
Because I was trying to connect with another gadget and see if it is safer.
Oh, okay. All right.
So let me try use my Are you hearing me?
No, we are not
Are you
hearing.
hearing me?
We are just able to hear you now. Morgan, I can hear you now. Can you hear me? Morgan, are you able to hear me? Apologies for the poor network quality. The speaker is trying to change devices and see how best you can log in back. Kindly be patient with us as he gets back on the call. Morgan, are you able to speak now? Morgan, can you hear me? Morgan, are you able to hear me? Okay, I can see your suggestions in the comments. Let's give about 5 minutes to the speaker. He was trying to change devices. And if the network is still bad, then we'll be able to close it.
Recording in progress.
Okay, Anita, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm so sorry, guys. My network is really, really bad. Been struggling with it, so I even don't know where I was. Okay, but I think it should be here. Okay, so we're talking about the aspect that privacy itself should be user-centric. And this, just like I said, that it's even beyond the collective users, it goes to the individual users. And also you look at the kind of users you have at the end of the day. For example, when you're operating a telemedicine platform, or if you have a fintech, for example, the information that you're collecting is very, very, very sensitive. So you should be able to take care of those kind of individual interests themselves. For example, no one wouldn't want the public to know of their HIV status, or even generally the healthy status, that information that you never want to get into to the public, including financial information. For example, you never want the public to know how highly indebted you are. So from looking at the kind of information that you have, that you're dealing with, also the kind of information you're dealing with is very important, because now you're being user-centric at the end of the day. So one of the concepts that is very important under that principle is the aspect of consent itself, that that individuals should be able to give their free and specific consent when you're requiring to collect their data, or even disclosing that information. You can imagine if, for example, Airtel has the laxity of disclosing your financial information to any other person outside there, I doubt that you'd be comfortable with it. So before disclosing that information, the requirement is that whoever has that information, or business that has that information, should be able to seek your consent before doing that. And the other aspect that you need to look at is that, just like I said, the greater the sensitivity of that data, the clearer and more specific the quality of consent required. Just like I was talking about sensitive information about your health, sensitive information about, for example, your financial information. That's how sensitive it is, I know, to all individuals. So that also requires a great and specific quality of consent required from you as a user. So you can look at Section 7 of the Data Protection Act. You realize that it stipulates how consent can be got, and the requirement that before you collect people's information, you require that you require that consent to do that. Then also the aspect of accuracy, you realize that information that is being collected by your system must be accurate, and it doesn't matter which kind of technology you're using, or the emerging technologies that you guys are designing or using. You must make sure that the information that you have is accurate, complete, and up to date. So for example, if you're using an onboarding tool, you must make sure that it picks as much as necessary information as possible, and that information that is accurate to identify, also serve the information, should be really complete. So for example, if I picked a loan, if you're doing, for example, credit scoring, if you have a credit scoring company or a platform, and you have information that I picked a loan from someone so and so, then you should be able again to it if I have paid my loan so that you don't affect my credit worth if I intend to use that information for further borrowing. So that's the aspect of accuracy. So you're looking at now, again, the privacy of the individuals themselves. So individuals should also have access to their information. People should be able to know which kind of information you have about them. And then also they should be able to know you should be able to disclose that information to them when they request it. Then also, when you look at section 28, 26, 25, and out the different rights, especially when it comes to aspects of access and the rights of the data subjects themselves. So you realize that we have these laws, but again, I must emphasize that it's even beyond the compliance with the law. It also goes back to the structures of the organization, that you have this privacy within privacy by design within your DNA of the business, within the DNA of your ICT policy, rather ICT policies and infrastructure at the same time. So compliancy, again, obviously now this talks about the aspect of you must remain compliant, especially, for example, if the Office of the Data Protection and Privacy requires you to register with them, you do that. Then if they request you to submit annual audits, you do that. So that's part of compliance, that you must establish a compliant, and you must comply in the first place, and also you must be able to establish a complaint and redress mechanism. So, for example, if someone has applied to access the information, also have about them is inaccurate, you should be able to have and also you resolve some of those aspects. So you look at section 31 and 30. I see my network is again acting up. But again, why does privacy by design really matter? You get it? So one of the aspects that you should be looking at, I've already talked about you ensuring privacy by design throughout the value chain or the life cycle of your data. That's from collection, use, retention, storage, and disposal or destruction of that information. So one of it is that you're trying to avoid legal liability and also you're maintaining a regulatory compliance, because you see some of these aspects are provided for under the law, aspects to do with how do you collect this information, how do you use it, and how do you retain. So also it helps you in protecting your brand and also preserving the consumer confidence in your products at the end of the day. So when you take that privacy protection, it can be taken also again by rather by taking the proactive approach. You can also take it by taking on certifications, the international certifications, by the way, when it comes to certifying, for example, cybersecurity or security of your systems. Then, for example, banks and financial technology service providers. I know NITIU here in Uganda has that certification as well. So you can take on such kind of certifications to see that your products or your systems comply with the standards, especially when it comes to cybersecurity and also data protection generally. So you must also, one of the things that compliance also having this thing also ensures that you are ahead of the legislative curve and also minimize compliance risks. Some of those risks come with heavy fines and penalties. So if you incorporate privacy by design, obviously at the end of the day, by default, you're already ensuring that you're complying with the laws, and already you're ahead of the legislative curve, more especially when you look at the laws that we have. The other aspect, I know we're running out of time. The other aspect is just again, when you incorporate privacy by design, you realize that you're avoiding these fines. Here you have statistics that globally you have a global fine or by data protection regulators of about US dollars 4.4 billion. And when you look at when you make your research, you realize that Facebook, now Meta has most of the fines, takes the biggest chunk of the fines. So these are all losses that you wouldn't really want to shoulder. Then when you also look at Uganda here, when you read section 38 of the corporation, if you're found guilty, 2% of your gross annual return, and that's a lot of money. There's no investor that would want to take on such kind of a risk, or even business sense to you. So compliance is the best way, and privacy by complying. And the aspect of customers in your product is very, very important, because at the end of the day, that's what the strength, or your strength within the market within which you're operating. So you can, for example, look at, I give an example here. Imagine if a telemedicine company or a national payment system had weaker systems that everyone knew. At the end of the day, you wouldn't really be comfortable dealing with them or even being their client. So if you lose that, if you don't incorporate privacy by design, and then you lose that confidence, at the end of the day, you lose a market, and your competitors are going to take your competitors that are incorporating these principles are going to take over that kind of market. So it is very important for you to really incorporate these aspects to build your brand. I quote Warren here, who says that it takes 20 years to build a brand and 5 minutes to train it. So you can imagine, you hear that, for example, one of the telecom companies here has been hit for example, by an attack, a cyber attack. At the end of the day, the market panics, and it's around 5-10 minutes of people knowing about this, and then you lose on the so many years that you have been in the market building this specific brand, showing people that you're the best in the market. Then just 5 minutes or 10 minutes of a data breach, you're already losing out. So that's why the principles require you to be proactive, make sure that you cover some of those risks. Yeah. So also it helps you to manage better those post-breach incidents, and also to regain consumer trust and confidence. Then also it helps you in maintaining those best practices, because you realize that when you take a proactive approach to privacy, you're not just complying with the local laws, that rather the domestic laws that we have, or even the international laws we have. You're also applying the best practices. I know several sectors have different practices, especially when it comes to ICT infrastructure. And you can look at banks, they have their own standards. You can look at the telecom companies, they also have their standards when it comes to that. So it helps you to maintain those practices if you incorporate privacy by design. So I know there are several emerging technologies. I'm just going through them briefly, and also correlate with try marrying with the discussion that we have been having. One of the most important or most talked about technology at the moment is artificial intelligence. But one thing that aspect that we need to understand is that it's one of the technologies that highly relies on data itself. So the aspects of data protection are at the forefront, especially when it comes to issues of data, because AI models are trained on this information. Within the tech circle, they will tell you that AI is as good as the data that you train it on. So at the end of the day, this information, rather these technologies require a lot of data. So that there are a lot of issues that you have seen, at least even in the media. You've seen how some of those AI companies have been taken to court over non-compliance with data protection laws, or also infringement of on the data protection and privacy rights of users. So if you're designing an AI product and you're looking at, for example, privacy by design, rather, if you're designing an AI product, you should be able to look at the principles, the fundamental principles that we have just been talking about, and incorporate them within your design, within your systems that you are designing. I know we have we have innovators and on this platform, so you should be able to incorporate these principles. Then the other aspect is Web3. We understand that we are shifting away from Web2. Web2, those are platforms now, for example, Twitter, Facebook, and others, to Web3 platforms that aim to decentralize, for example, how we operate and interact with the internet generally. And some of these products are built on concepts of privacy by design. For example, when you look at the blockchain technology itself, it's one of it promotes that bit of anonymity when it comes to the use, then also decentralized storage of information, that you don't have a centralized database. Now, for example, if it is Zoom, rather, if it is Twitter, you have a central system that stores all the information that we post on the net. But these platforms decentralize this kind of information to minimize, for example, the impact of the data breach. So you would have to really, it's very hard to compromise the whole platform of blockchain, yet it is very easy to compromise a platform like Facebook, a platform like Twitter. So the importance of such kind of data, rather platforms, is that they incorporate such the principles of privacy by design. That's why they're very important. And I know that we might be having innovators building systems using this bit of technology. It's one of the most important advancements that we are having. And I would emphasize that we build using these platforms that really put privacy at the forefront. Then the other emerging technologies, obviously, Internet of Things. Obviously, it is a broad term. You may not have a specific definition of it, but these are physical devices connected to the internet, and they collect, share, and use data. I know some of you must be having smartwatches, wearables like smartwatches, you have glasses, then you have home appliances like TVs that are smart, you have fridges, then you also have public infrastructure like traffic lights that collect this a lot of data itself. So, but at the end of the day, the discussion that we should be having is that we should be able to embed the principles of privacy by design in all of these technologies. So, for example, if you're designing a wearable, I know the companies here in Uganda that are designing wearables, you should be able, if you should be able to be discussing aspects to do with the decentralization of information, for example, because of the impact that comes with centralized databases. So if someone has, you're putting on a bangle, for example, for security purposes, someone should be able to remotely deactivate who has access to their location. They should be able to have that control. The aspect of, we talked about security by default, or you have that bit of protection by default itself. So those are the aspects that you should be looking at when you're designing your Internet of Things, or those smart technologies that you're building. So again, just like I've been discussing, however, my convenience, they pose obviously several privacy concerns. So that's why even as business people who are innovators, you should be able to design products that respect the privacy of your users at the end of the day. So in the nutshell, we have privacy by design within our laws. What we must emphasize is having privacy by design in our own institutions. So we should institutionalize privacy by design, following those principles that we have, and also complying with the laws that we have. So by that, we should be able to, one, grow the markets. When consumers have confidence in our products, at the end of the day, we are able to grow the market, and also to make commercial value at the end of the day. Then for the startups that are on this call, when your exit is, for example, an acquisition or a merger, someone would want to do a due diligence, especially when it comes to the compliance of your systems with data protection laws and standards, so that they don't carry on a liability later on after acquiring your business. So at the end of the day, if you really don't put these concepts at the forefront of how you do business or how you develop your systems, they're going to affect the value of your business, especially when you're planning to exit through an acquisition or through a merger. When due diligence is made and then they realize you have such kind of compliance risks or infrastructure risks that may end up causing fines, especially to whoever acquires your business. So that's why it is very important to think about these concepts within the data cycle or within the life cycle of your business itself. Okay. So thank you for listening to me. I know we had issues with network. You might not have had me here and there. But yeah, I'm ready to receive any questions that you have so that I can respond. If you missed me anywhere, you can raise the question and then I can clarify.
Yeah, thank you so much, Morgan, for that presentation, and especially, of course, the emphasis on the aspects to consider when incorporating privacy by design in our innovations. There's one question that I'm going to request that we take. I know we are out of time, but let's have this question. So someone asked earlier, under what circumstances does an entity obtain private data without obtaining specific consent from the user? Over to you, Morgan.
Okay, so we have only one question?
Yes.
An entity may be obviously police, for example. If it is carrying on a lawful order, it can obtain your data without your consent. Then also, if you're under a contract obtained. So those are some of the circumstances under which your information can be taken without your consent. Section 7 of the Data Protection Act obviously regulates how that consent is a requirement, but the general rule is that you should never collect, or an entity should not collect information or personal data without the consent of the data subject. Then the exceptions are set out in subsection 2. And those are the aspects that I've been talking about, where it is necessary, for example, for performance of a public duty by a public body. We saw that when it came to the NERA, not NERA, the national census. I doubt that any of you signed the consent form, but it's because it was carrying on its own public duty. Then also your personal information be collected for national security, detection and investigation, prosecution. For example, that's so the aspect is that where it is necessary, that it has to do with public bodies. Yeah. So also the other aspect is when where it is necessary for compliance with the legal obligation to which your data subject is subject to. So that's in that aspect, your consent may not be really taken. So when I can only, for interest of time, I can refer you to subsection 2 of section 7 of the Data Protection Act. It gives those circumstances under which, yeah, your consent may not be required.
Okay, thank you so much, Morgan. I do not see any other questions. I would like to thank you for today's presentation. Thank you for making the time for us. And also thank you so much to the participants for joining us today. Of course, despite the internet issues, we appreciate your patience and participation. We will, of course, be able to share the recording as well as the presentation slides for your further learning, and of course, for you to look at some of the things you may have missed. Thank you so much. I have put a link in the chat. Kindly click on it and give us feedback on today's webinar. And Morgan, do you have any parting shots? And maybe in your parting shots, someone is requesting you to repeat the section that talks about instances where consent may not be given.
Yes, I referred to section 7, subsection 2.
Okay, do you have some parting
I
shots?
think, yeah, my parting shot is that one, privacy is a very important right, especially in this digital age. And to the users or consumers of products, you should be very conscious of your privacy, and you should be conscious about your service providers, especially when you're choosing your service providers. Then also the service providers should be conscious about how they build their business models, how they build their systems at the engine. If we have platforms that do not put privacy and data protection at the forefront, and the information ends up in the wrong hands, that information may be used even to compromise not just individual rights, but also national security at the end of the day. So that's why it is very important, because that information may not even just affect you as an individual, but you as an individual, as a business, but may affect the whole nation. So that's why it is very important. Then also the aspect of security. You all remember what happened in last week when we had issues with system failures, and airports could not function, banks were down, telecom companies were down. So if you have privacy by design, obviously in your systems, you should be able to mitigate such kind of risks. So that's what happens in most cases if you don't emphasize aspects like privacy design within your ICT infrastructure, if you don't emphasize it within your policies, internal policies, as a business, as a developer, as an innovator. So for me, my call is compliancy, and also not just compliancy, but proactive compliance.
Okay, thank you so much, Morgan. Again, we appreciate your time today. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. For the data protection officers, I continue to remind you to submit your annual privacy compliance reports in case you have not submitted, because the deadline is fast approaching. Please follow us on our social media to keep updated on any developments about the office. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Our contacts are available on the website. You can as well send us an email on info@pdpo.go.ug. If there are any questions related to your registration or renewals, send an email to registration@pdpo.go.ug. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. See you next month.